Hi everyone, my name is Nick Menough. In this capstone, I want to explore not just the framework, but the mindset that's been transforming how we innovate design thinking. This presentation was built on our this HCI innovation readings and cases from this course. Reflects on how design thinking fits into human-computer interaction, organizational innovation, and even my own personal and professional goals. I'm gonna walk you through what design thinking is, how it can be applied in industry, and why I believe it's essential for future tech, and go through a couple case studies. I chose design thinking because it sits at an intersection of technology, empathy, and creativity. It's structured yet a flexible way to solve problems in a humor-centered way. As I'm right now, as I'm a software engineer and someone that's aiming to work in UX research and design, I want it not to only build useful systems, but meaningful ones. Design thinking offers that mindset. I was also drawn to how it disturbs traditional corporation structures, challenging them to prioritize people over just metrics. This method also stood out in our course discussions around innovation, especially when we talked about usability and iteration and end user insights. What design thinking is sometimes it's misunderstood as just a brainstorm. It's just actually a cycle process. It begins with empathy, understanding the user needs. Then the team defines the core problem, ideates potential solution, prototypes those ideas, and tests them. But you just don't go through it once, one loop. You define it and you adjust it until it's about learning through doing and being open to failure early. Tim Brown described it as balancing desirability, feasibility, and viability, which maps between onto HCI's mission of design systems that work for people, not just technically, but socially and emotionally. Design thinking enhances HCI by providing a process that helps integrate user insights into the system design processes, where HCI often focuses on usability and interaction behaviors. Design thinking brings a layer of empathy and iteration. For example, in like traditional systems, engineering's users input might come at the start and end, but when design thinking is embedded throughout, this means better fit, fewer cost pivots, and more meaningful impacts. Lokeda's article makes the case that design thinking helps us challenge bias and status assumptions, both critical and HCI when designing for diverse and complex user needs. I think one like this is probably why I like HCI too is one of the most powerful aspects of design thinking is that it doesn't just come from a single discipline. It inherently has interdisciplinaries. That's part of what makes it so flexible and effective. It's got cognitive psychology that helps us understand how people think, make decisions, interact with interfaces. Um, we have the UX research that draws on behavior and observation and testing, helping us empathize and validate design assumptions with real users, not just stakeholders. We have industrial and graphic design contributes prototype skills with visual clarity and interactive mindset. These disciplines gave design thinking its hands-on creative bias towards action. System thinking is the key when designing for complexity. It helps us see not just isolated features, but how they affect the entire user's ecosystem from onboarding to long-term use. And then we have ethnography that contributes to contextual inquiry methods. Instead of asking users what they want, we watch how they behave, what frustrates them, and how they adapt to workarounds. Finally, business strategy ties it all together. Design thinking isn't just about making things usable, it's about the value that are deliverable and aligns with the organizational goals. What you get from this blend is a toolkit that supports creativity, accountability, soft skills combined with analytical, and this fusion is what makes design thinking, especially in tackling ill-defined or messy problems, like that's often found in health or education or civic technologies. Uh, Design thinking began with product development, especially at IDEO and similar firms. Over time, it moved into several digital services, strategy, and organizational design and system level innovation. SP used it to restructure an internal process. IBM used it to reimagine how 400,000 employees approach user problems. Um, the, the key shift has been from their aesthetics to function, then to experience and how to transformation. Nakata describes how design thinking offers a valuable alternative to rigid project management tools like StageGate, giving organizations the flexibility to respond to uncertain, complex user needs. Uh, let's look at a closer look at one of the most ambitious and successful applications of design thinking at scale. I think IBM did a really good job on this. Um, in 2012, IBM was facing a major challenges where products weren't aligned with user needs. Developers' morals were low. Design was seen as an afterthought. Virginia Ramadi, IBM's then CEO, wanted to recenter the company around human-centered innovation. She appointed Phil Gilbert as he was proclaimed as a UX fanatic and design to lead the transformation. His vision wasn't to just teach designers how to use new tools. It was more of a way to make designers think core of how IBM worked. That meant embedding designers into the product teams and training the entire departments and enterprise design thinking. IBM didn't just borrow the Stafford model; they created their own. The loop, a cycle of observe, reflect, and make. The goal was continuous learning and iteration, not linear delivery. By 2020, over 250 employees had gone through design thinking workshops. Over 2,500 designers were embedded across IBM teams. Time to the market dropped by 50% for many enterprise applications. One enterprise cloud platform team reported a 75% reduction in alignment time just by using Hill's design thinking concept for shared user outcome goals. The biggest shift, teams stopped starting with product specs and started with people. They brought users into playbacks, built sponsor user programs, and co-created experiences rather than delivering features in isolation. IBM was success shows that design thinking isn't just for startups or product teams. It can be scaled in highly technically regulated or global environments. It also teaches us that successful design thinking adoption requires training, leadership support, and crucial persistence, not just toolkits or templates. Some inspiring people in design thinking, I off the research papers, Tim Brown brought design thinking to the forefront, especially with the IDEO work on rapid iteration and ethnographic research. Jen Lokenka showed how it works in large organizations and backed it with data. Kristen's jobs to be done lens added a layer of understanding why users hire products, which fits into the empathy defined phase. Nakata helped us understand how design thinking can be positioned against corporate norms, making it a legitimate innovation approach rather than just a trendy method. To get together, they give design thinking both breadth and credibility. Some real world examples. Design thinking wasn't just a theory; it's a transfer of how real companies operate. Let's start over IBM. They did just a dab in design thinking. Like I said, they scaled it. They hired over 2,500 professional designers to train over 2,500 people, um, employees, and integrate the design thinking across business units. They create their own version of the model that we talked about, the observe, reflect, make. The loop encouraged constant iteration and real-time learning, which was a major shift for used to along enterprise development cycles. Result include faster prototype and clear alignment with users. Then we have IDEO, which arguably brought design thinking into a popular coincidence. You might know them from the ABC Night Special, where they redesigned the shopping cart in just 5 days. But more importantly than the outcome was the process, a mix of field researchers, rapid prototyping, and cross-functional collaboration. Their model failed often to succeed sooner. IDEO provided that design thinking works in sectors as different as healthcare, consumers, and digital services. Finally, SAP offered an interesting case of internal transformation. They used design thinking boot camps to break down silos and reinnovate their engineering culture. These weren't marketing exercises; they were cross-team innovation labs that led to like real changes in how teams communicated and problem solved. One big insight that I read about was design thinking just to improve the output. It boosted their morale and collaboration. The challenge was a sustainable post boot camp. However, more on the next slide about this. The strengths of design thinking. Design thinking has several key strengths. It prioritizes empathy, gives us a way to understand users not through their data but through their observation and interviews. Second, interactive, meaning we test, learn, and adapt. The third one is it collaborates. It brings together diverse disciplines for richer ideas. Lastly, it works well in unforeseen problems like in vulnerable environments like tech or healthcare, where users need and tech change fast. Design thinking helps keep innovate human centered. There are some challenges despite all its strengths. Design thinking always easy to implement. The first and most common challenge is cultural resistance. I always think of when Agile came and cultural resistance, like was I was doing on some of that. Many traditional organizations are built efficiency, control, and hierarchy, while design thinking asks them to be open, exploratory, and interactive. Uh, that can be feel threatening. At SAP, on the saw this on the first hand after initial design thinking boot camps. Many employees reverted to the old patterns without sustained support. Uh, the second, there's a risk of shallow adoption. This is some called innovation theater, where teams do a few sticky note sessions, take pictures, and call it design thinking, but without deep user research, ongoing iteration, and cross-functional buy-in, it loses value. Third, leadership buy-in is critical, like the case study that I mentioned in IBM. The shift only happened because the leadership prioritized and funded the design transformation. Without design thinking, thinking stalls after the pilot phase. Fourth, it can be resource insensitive. Design thinking often requires dedicated time, users access, skilled fabricators, and space to prototype, which are all tough to maintain in a fast-paced environment. Uh, on the last note, design thinking often is understood as just brainstorming. That's why education training matters. Teams need to see it not as a soft skill, but as a strategical approach to buying better systems, services, and products. Comparing another framework, design thinking with one of the most dominant innovation frameworks is in the corporate world. It was StageGate process. StageGate was developed by Robert Cooper has been around since the 1980 in research and development projects. It's highly structured. It passes through gates or phases, like the concept of feasibility development, and launches with strict criteria at each step. It's great for controlling risk and maintaining deadlines, especially in large manufacturing or pharma industries. But there's the tension. It assumes you already know what the right problem is. It focuses on efficiency, predictability, and control. It doesn't handle unforeseen problems very well, and it's mostly often doesn't appear until the very end when the product is nearly built. Now, in the contrast with design thinking, starts not with requirements, but with curiosity, with empathy. We observe the users, define the problem based on the real pain points, and explore multiple ideas through prototyping and testing. Embraces unforeseen. It's interactive, non-linear. It's inclusive, inviting insights from engineering, marketing, psychology, end users themselves in terms of the team dynamic. Stage 8 tends to operate in a functional silo, ensure it hands it off to testing, who hands it off to marketing, and then design thinking. And design thinking, these voices are at the table together, which not only improves the product but strengthens the cross team alignment. Now, strategical design thinking. Roger Martin is a leading voice in connecting design thinking with business strategy. Unlike the practitioners who focused on how teams use design thinking, Martin emphasizes on the role at the strategic level. Design the design of business. He explains like design thinking allows companies to bridge the gap between reliability and value, that can balance and what we can prove with what might be possible. Martin suggests is that most firms over optimize for what they can measure, underinvest in exploring new opportunities. Design thinking helps shift that mindset. In the article with Unter, he explained on this by urging organizations to embed design thinking into strategic decision making and leadership culture, not just product or UX teams. This idea directly supports how like companies like IPM that I talked about earlier successfully scaled design thinking beyond project teams and into enterprise transformation. Martin's thinking aligns directly with the IBM case study. IBM doesn't stop at prototyping or team workshops. They did a really good job at investing in training leadership, redesigning team structures, and reshaping business problems were framed. Martin would say that like IBM treated design not as a downstream activity, but as a capability embedded into the company's operating model. By building design thinking into their strategic planning, IBM shortened delivery cycles, improved cross-functional alignment, and created space for responsible innovation. We talked a lot about this semester on how innovation just isn't about like technology; it's about meeting people's needs in other new ways. We did a lot of case studies. That's exactly where design thinking thrives. Take disruptive innovation, for instance. Clayton Christian explains how disruptive happens when companies focus too much on existing customers and miss emerging needs. Design thinking flips that. It helps us zoom out, identify underserved or non-consuming populations and prototypes around their pain points before a competitor does. Now think about the jobs to be done instead of segmenting people by age or income. What we ask these questions like, what processes are they trying to make? That's deeply compatible with the empathy and defined stages of design thinking. This helps us avoid jumping into features instead of focus on what people are actually trying to get done in their lives. And there is lead user innovation, which invites the most passionate or frustrated users into the creation processes. That's pure design thinking. Instead of designing for users, we design with them. And the IDEO readings. That was one of their superpowers, engaging real users at every phase. When we view design thinking through these lens, it becomes more than a tool, it becomes a foundation for almost every other theory of innovation we've studied. Some of my personal reflection, this course and this project made me think differently, but not just about the systems, but how I want to work. Um, Design thinking gave me a roadmap for this kind of profession. Um, I wanted to be. I've always known I wanted to work in an intersection of people and technology. That's why I chose HCI. Um, but what I did fully appreciate was how I could stay grounded in empathy when things get fast, technical, and complex. Design thinking reminds me that it's okay to slow down and really listen, to observe before assuming, to prototype, fail, and learn without ego. That resonates with me deeply. Whenever I'm working on a product team and conducting user interviews or mapping journeys, I now see the empathy just as research step, but as a design philosophy. And more than that, design thinking gives a collaborative language that can bring into teams to foster better brainstorming and more inclusive thinking and solutions that matter. That's just a theory. That's just not a theory. That's the kind of designer I want to be. To wrap things up, I just wanted to leave you with this. Design thinking isn't just a sticky note and whiteboard, it's a philosophy that respects complexity of real life. It says talk to your users, observe them, walk in their shoes, and then design not what you think they need, but what they truly are struggling with, even if like you can't actually get it yet. It's that powerful, especially in HCI where we're building systems that can scale to millions of users. If we want to do that ethically, inclusively, and meaningfully, we need methods that are centered human experience, not just business outcome. I think design thinking gives us that mindset and process, and honestly, the heart to do that. And for me, that's why this wasn't just a paper presentation. It was something turning point in how I think about design and how it carries forward in my career. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation and references, and thank you very much.